Hi folks, my name is Girish, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics for another week. Today we're going to talk about fitness and health and habits or routine. Or are they the same thing? We will figure that out by speaking with him. I went to his website, I spoke with him right before this recording, and there were 5 different things that he focuses on fitness and health and nutrition, all lumped them in one aspect, in one website, and one program actually. So let's talk to him, and I'm going to pronounce the name correctly. I'm going to say Stavros to the show, and hopefully we will correct that name, and we will have a great time on this episode. How are you? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
Thank you, Girish, for having me. I'm very happy to be on your show, and I love the name Back to Basics, and I love that name because everything's about going back to basics. And especially in fitness, I think they've complicated things way too much.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much, by the way, for coming on my show and making this brighter for me. But before we get into the basics of the episode and what we're going to talk about today, what does Back to Basic mean to you?
To me, Back to Basics means to go back to what really worked. And the simpler the solution, the easier it is to implement. And the fact is that if you look at like the way I was raised in Greece, we didn't do anything complicated. We didn't count calories, points. Actually, we didn't even know what calorie was. And yet we maintained our health, no problem, because we did certain basic things that humans, they're supposed to be part of human life, like activity, like the simple food that we're supposed to be eating. Nowadays, I think things have been complicated so much, and when something's complicated, it's very hard to fit into your day and stick with it long enough to make a difference. And people burn out, and people already, we're living very complicated lives anyway, and we have enough on our plates to think about. Having to count calories and points and whatever else, count carbs, it's enough to take people over the edge and burn out and quit.
Of course, of course. Thank you again, by the way, for answering that question from your aspect. And it looks like you and I are pretty much on the same wavelength when it comes to Back to Basics, because it looks like we have a tendency to complicate things. And this is the show to uncomplicate it and make it simple as possible as we can. Hopefully you and I can make that work for everyone else to listen. So thank you again for coming. Now, when you came from Greece, right, and you came here, what made you get into health and fitness? Was there a trigger that happened in your life that you started this whole journey, or how did it work?
Yes, actually, you can call it a trigger. I also have a degree in culinary arts. Greeks, we all own restaurants. So I worked in restaurants too when I first came to the States, and I went to the culinary school, graduated, and I enjoy cooking. And just like any other kid, 18, 19, want to look good on the beach, I started exercising, started, talking to different personal trainers, getting some advice on eating. And I realized that I could not stick with that advice. It was very hard, no matter the results I was getting. And a lot of trainers would tell me, well, don't you feel like once you get the nice spot, don't you feel motivated to keep going? I'm like, no, I feel burnt out and I want to quit. So I felt that the average fitness professional did not understand people like myself who want to be in shape, but don't love the process of getting in shape. Because I'm not willing to sacrifice my life to be in shape. I want to be in shape so I can enjoy life. So if my life becomes all about fitness, what's the point? And that's how I start researching, and I came to the realization that the fitness industry has a huge problem. It's full of fitness nuts, and I mean it in a nice way, by the way.
Of course,
and,
of course.
And what I mean by it's people who love fitness. But here's the problem. If you love fitness, and you got into the industry because you love exercising, love watching what you're eating, and you enjoy all that stuff, how can you help somebody who wants to be in shape but hates all that stuff? Very hard. And I saw there was a need, and that's how I slowly started researching, and then I ended up quitting my cooking career, and my family really had a fit about that because I was good at cooking also.
Sure.
And I said, no, I feel a drive. I felt like that was why I was put on this earth. Seriously, I mean, I know a lot of people say that, but I really felt that I had a purpose now, and that was to get that message out. I gotta admit, like the first 10 years of my fitness career, because I got into the industry in 1992, I was as confused as everybody else
Of course.
because there's a lot of contradicting information in the industry.
Do you think it's easier to educate people today versus back in the days?
Yes, I think now through the internet, I'm able to reach more people. Podcasts now, because back when I started, there was no podcast. There was no, I mean, very hard to get on radio or TV. So it made it very hard for me to get the message out. And the predominant message that you saw in the industry was, I would like to say, the wrong message. Because let's think about it. In 1992, that's the year I got into the industry. At that time, the obesity rate was 12.6%. And we spent $30 billion that year on weight loss product and services. Today, we are spending over $65 billion on weight loss product and services. And the obesity rate, if I read correctly, just went over 40%.
Wow.
So what does it tell you? It tells me whatever we're doing, the popular methods are not producing results, or to be more precise, and not producing sustainable results. Because the fact is, yes, all the weight loss programs work. No question about it. If you follow their advice, it will work. The question is, for how long? How long can you maintain those results? And if you look at the statistics today, only 5% can actually maintain the results long term. 95% of the people who lose weight gain the weight back.
And just to be clear, thank you so much, by the way, for that. Is this only in the United States, the numbers that you're mentioning, or is it just around the world?
The exact numbers is in the United States, but if you look at Europe, which I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, basically the same way. I look at my home city. Actually, I'm from a island, a small town. I go back every other year usually, and when I lived in Greece, out of 350 kids in my school, junior high, I would literally say 3 or 4 kids were overweight. Now obese, overweight. Now you go back, 40% of the kids are overweight.
Wow.
Same thing with adults. With very few, most people with normal weight. Now I go back, no different than here. I would say 70% easily are overweight.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you again, by the way, for answering that question, making us understand that it is a very serious issue, is not something to be laid back and sitting down in your couch and just saying, okay, it's going to lose weight, or you're going to look better, or you're going to be more healthier. You got to do something in order to get something, right? Live Your Way Thin. How did that name come up?
Well, I originally, the first name that I had was Olympus Personal Training. Just because I was Greek, I said, Olympus, Greek. But a lot of people thought I was training Olympic athletes. So I realized picking a name just because because I'm Greek American, it's not a good way to pick a name. So I wanted a name that has a meaning. And the reason I went with Live Your Way Thin, because the fact is, you have to live your way to a lean and healthy body. You cannot take a break from your life, your everyday stress, go to some resort, lose the weight, and then go back into your life. You have to be able to deal with everyday stresses, to deal with your friends bringing junk food into your house or to your place of employment. You have to live your way to thin. When I say thin, I mean healthy also, obviously, because there's a lot of thin people who are not healthy too.
Sure. So let me ask you this: before we get into the whole details of your whole campus, let's say, okay, what does routine and habit mean to you?
Routine and habit is when something is done automatically without conscious thought. For example, in Greece, and that's, by the way, was one of my first breakthroughs, was we were thin and healthy for the most part, but nobody spend any time thinking about our diet, about exercising. We didn't spend a moment thinking about it.
Sure.
And yet we're maintaining all that stuff, no problem. Why? Our health, I meant, is because through our traditions, they passed down these routines. In other words, the way we ate was a routine, was a habit. We didn't have to think. We ate the way we ate, not because it was healthy, it's because that's the way we were taught to eat. And
Sure.
thank God, happened to be healthy.
Thank
Same
God.
thing with activity. For example, in Greece, when you went out for dinner, all the restaurants are on the main street by the ocean. We didn't just go out and sat at the restaurant and ate. You would literally walk for 30 or 40 minutes back and forth, like a nice stroll, and just talk, meet people, chat with your friends before you sat down to the restaurant. Again, we didn't do that walking though because it was healthy for us.
Sure.
It was a routine. So that to me, a routine is like the autopilot. So if we can put a fitness program on a routine that you don't have to think, it's like putting your weight loss program on autopilot. So then your conscious mind is free to enjoy life instead of focusing on your diet.
Yeah, thank you so much, because I asked this question to someone else earlier during the week, and he didn't think that there was a difference. But then when I explained to him that after a certain time, a certain day, let's say hypothetically 21 days, after 21 days, that's considered a habit, a routine, right? So I think he got a little mixed up that both of them could be the same thing. So thank you for clarifying that, because there is a difference between the two.
Yeah.
So all these words, I'm going to tell you these words, and you tell me if this fits within your 5 habits. And then we'll get into the 5 habits.
Yeah.
Courage, passion, confidence, willpower, determination, support, and commit. Does that fit into your 5 habits? Let's get into the details of that.
And how it would fit in the right. Before I get into the 5 habits with my clients, first I have to make sure they have the right mindset. So what you just talked about fits into the right mindset, which you need to have in order to develop the 5 habits.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So to me, is you got to have motivation. You have to have courage to, or believe that you could develop whatever habit needs to be developed. And so that to me, the 5 habits are important, but having the right mindset that will help you develop those 5 habits, it's, I would say in the sense, even more important, because without the right mindset, you're not going to be able to develop the right habits, so it doesn't really matter at the end. Which actually, if you don't mind, I want to make a point here, because I think it's a point that a lot of fitness professionals miss, is that the solution to sustainable weight loss has 2 parts. Part 1 is knowing what healthy habits you need to develop. Okay, and those are the 5 habits I talk about. The second part is, how do I go about developing these habits without burning myself out? And that's the part I think a lot of them are missing. And that's what you just mentioned is part of that. That part of the solution is the developing the right mindset that will support you in developing those habits. If that makes sense.
Of course. Now, these habits that we're going to get into, do you think it's more for the older crowd, the younger crowd, or just pretty much anybody?
It's for everybody, including whether you need to lose weight or not. Because a lot of people say to me, I don't need to lose weight. It doesn't really matter. Because by developing these 5 habits, if you need to lose weight, you will lose weight. If you don't need to lose weight, just because somebody's thin doesn't make them healthy either. I mean, I know plenty of thin people had heart attacks and strokes.
Yes.
You get healthier because I follow all 5 habits and don't have a weight problem, but I realized that I will have health issues if I continued down the same path. And my father was unfortunately passed away at a pretty young age, at 67, because he was thin. But because he was thin, he wrongly believed that, hey, I can get away doing all this bad stuff. And he has some really bad, unhealthy habits, which he knew it. But because you didn't have a weight problem, sometimes we're mistaking thinness with health.
Of course.
And that's not true.
Of course. So before we get into the 5 habits, if you don't mind, let me just talk to my audience 1 second. So we are talking about the details of how to lose weight, how to be healthy in many, many different ways. But the first thing is, I want you to consult with your doctor before we go any further about this whole thing. Because you know what? If I'm thin and I have a B12 less than whatever the range is, then the doctor should know that. He should not, and I should not. And we're not advising anyone to do that. Because, you know what? Let's say I have a tendency for D3 low or cholesterol high, BP issues. There's so many out there. But have your consult with the doctor first before we go any further than this. So thank you so much for that. So what are the 5 habits? Let's get into the details of that if you don't mind.
The first habit is the habit of the activity habit, I call it, or the habit of exercising.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you want me to go through 5 of them really
Yeah,
briefly?
just very
And
briefly.
go through each?
Yep.
Well, let me talk about the first one, then the exercise habit. See, the exercise habit, the problem with that is that a lot of people, when they decide they want to get in shape, they go to a trainer or they read a book or they go on YouTube and they come up with the most effective workout they can come up with that will get them the best results. And on the surface, it sounds like really good idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad idea because the first goal of an exercise program is not results. The first goal of an exercise program should be to develop the exercise habit, to make exercising a habitual behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And exercising should have 3 parts. Part 1, something that challenges your muscles, like some form of weight training. It can be tubing, it can be free weights, it doesn't really matter. Anything that challenges your muscles. But I said challenge, not kill them. Because I know a lot of trainers like to really push hard, and I think that's where you lose a lot of people.
Sure.
And did you know that actually around 90% of the benefits from weight training come from the first set?
Mm.
The second set, you might get another 10%. The third set, you get very little. For the average person, it doesn't worth the extra time.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell people in the beginning, start with 1 set. Because it keeps the workout really short and simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy for you to keep repeating. And by keep repeating it, that's how it becomes habitual.
Mm.
The second part is some form of aerobics. Good for the heart, the lungs. Now, what the experts are telling people, and well, obviously I'm one of the experts, but most of the other experts say that you got to do at least 20 minutes. I don't know if you heard 20 to 30 minutes 3
Mm-hmm.
times a week.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I tell my clients when they first start? Start with 1 minute 3 times a week. And the response I get is, what would 1 minute do? Well, it's not going to do much as far as health is concerned or weight loss. But what it will do is get you to do your walking regularly. Because if, let's say I was your trainer and I told you, you know something, by next week I want you to do 3 aerobic workouts of 1 minute each compared to 3 aerobic workouts of 30 minutes each. Which one you're more likely to do? 1 minute.
Of course.
So what happens is, because a lot of times we get home and we're tired, and then let's say if you have to do 30 minutes of cardio and you're tired, you're going to skip it. On the other hand, if you only have to do 1 minute, you're going to get on the treadmill or go outside and do your cardio. But how many times are you going to stop after 1 minute? Sometimes you're going to make it 3 and then 4 and then 5. But the idea is to build a routine of walking. And then before you know it, 1 minute becomes 5, becomes 10, becomes 20, and then you have the habit of doing aerobics.
Sure.
And the third thing is to have some form of stretching. You want to make sure you get your muscles to the full range of motion. So that's the first habit. The second habit is similar to intermittent fasting. I call it the 16-hour habit. I was teaching it before intermittent fasting became popular because in Greece we ate that way. So what I mean by that is you want to take regular 16-hour breaks from food Monday through Friday. So you want to, because what you eat is important, but taking breaks from food is as important as what you eat. And the best way to do that is skip breakfast. Just have lunch and dinner. You got your 16 hours. If you eat dinner, let's say you finish dinner around 8 o'clock, which most people do, and you don't eat lunch till 12 o'clock the next day, you got 16 hours. And if you look at all healthy regions, you'll notice that on average, That's how they eat. They know breakfast is not an important meal.
So we have been told that breakfast is important for you with that example of yours. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we have also been told to eat 3 times a day. That's
Yep.
what we've been told.
Yeah.
Do you think we should take in small portions to make that 16 hours? Or should we make it earlier to make those 16 hours? Does that make sense?
No, so you mean like
Let's say
no,
I'm gonna
like-
have let's say I'm gonna have my dinner at 5 o'clock versus 8.
yes.
You think I'm gaining my hours now?
Yes, yeah, if you have your dinner earlier, yes, that means you could eat early the next day, as long as 16 hours minimum.
Okay.
But the idea of, because this is a question I ask, because I in school, by the way, I learned the same thing. Exactly what you said, that's what I learned in school, that you got to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and all that usual, like breakfast, the most important meal of the day. But the reason I questioned it is because I got to give credit to my mother for that one. So one day I was talking to my mother, and she's like, I've been listening to your lectures, but why are you teaching people that breakfast is the most important meal of the day? I go, that's what I learned in school. So she's like, well, in Greece, did you eat breakfast? I go, not really. Does anybody eat breakfast, adult wise, when you were in Greece in the 80s and 70s? I go, no. Who was healthier? We were. And then it kind of made me question what I learned in school, because unfortunately special interest groups has a lot of effects of what we are taught in school. I mean, that's, face the facts. I started looking at all the healthy regions. Come to find out, nobody really eats breakfast. And if you look at the true Mediterranean diet, because I've done a lot of reading on it, because I was raised on it, I find it kind of interesting that nobody talks about the fact that a typical Mediterranean diet does not include breakfast. What they're telling us that we ate as breakfast is what we had on the weekends. Yeah, on the weekends, sometimes we did have something
Sure.
breakfast, but it wasn't a normal thing. Normally, the adults got up in the morning, had a coffee, and went to work. We never ate anything in the morning. And if you really, I don't have time to go into detail, but if you really look at how the body functions and how the body works, breakfast makes no sense. Because really quick, what's the best thing to do after eating a meal? Rest. Like, do you have any dogs or cats?
Yes. Dogs.
What?
Dogs.
Right.
Yeah.
What does the dog do after eating a good-sized meal? They nap. Look at a lion in the wild or a cat, whatever. What do they do after eating? They nap. Why?
They nap,
It's
right.
because it aids digestion. In Greece, when we had a bigger meal at lunch in the cities and dinner at the villages, after ate lunch, we had a 3-hour lunch break from work, so we took a nap. The best thing you can do for digestion. In the morning, where they're telling us here that we should have a big breakfast, well, do you take a nap after eating breakfast? I know nobody. I don't know anybody that does that.
Sure.
So, but anyway, there's a lot more research on it that to me, it completely debunks the idea that we should be eating breakfast. To me, ideally, you want to have this 16-hour break. There's so many benefits from it. Just to mention a few. It makes your body more efficient at burning fat. Isn't that what we want? To burn fat more efficiently? It makes your body more sensitive to insulin. Prevents diabetes, or it can actually reverse diabetes. Now, one little note here: if you're diabetic, definitely talk to your doctor, because you can't just go to 16 hours if you're diabetic.
That's right.
A
That's
different
right.
group of people.
That's a group,
Okay,
right.
so I'll make sure we're clear there. It gets rid of misfolded proteins, dysfunctional cells, and mutated cells. Misfolded proteins is the precursor to all the mental diseases like dementia, Alzheimer's. In Greece, those diseases did not exist. By the way, now they do. And the other thing is, it gets rid of mutated and dysfunctional cells. That's the precursor to cancer. That's why healthy regions have such a low incidence of cancer, is because they regularly take breaks from food. Plus, we did the fasting too, which is another whole conversation.
Of course.
Anyway, so that's the one. That's the second habit. The third habit is to learn to eat out of true hunger, and no more than twice a day, Monday to Friday. Weekends, I always tell people, relax. You want to have breakfast on Sunday? By the way, I have breakfast on Sunday, and it's fine. It's Monday to Friday. So you want to start learning to eat out of true hunger. Because the question I have for you is, when was the last time you stopped and asked yourself, am I hungry? Or am I eating just because somebody told me it's breakfast time, or it's lunchtime, or it's dinner time, you gotta eat?
Hmm.
And so with that habit, I teach you how to identify true hunger. So what is true hunger compared to a craving? A true hunger is basically, you ask yourself this question: would I be able to indulge on a piece of stale bread? If the answer is no, I want something else, you're not hungry then. Where true hunger, you don't care. I'm not saying, obviously we all have our favorite
Of
foods.
course.
What I am saying though is you don't care as much. If you care, then you're not truly hungry. I know with my kids, I know if you have any kids, but when they come home, uh, Daddy, I'm hungry. Oh, this is what we have for dinner. Oh, no, no, I don't want that. Well, you're not hungry. You're not hungry then. My mother never gave us a choice of what we're gonna eat.
But we around the world, we have a tendency to munch on certain things while we're just not doing anything,
Yes, yes,
right? So I think what we're
yeah,
trying to say is to get away from that munching. Is that what we're saying?
exactly. I want you to become more aware and not use food as entertainment or something to pass our time with. Most of the time, weekends, I always say to people, relax. But we're talking about getting back to the basics. You can't get any more basic than learning to eat out of true hunger, because think about this. What is the true purpose of eating? The true purpose
Hmm.
is to nourish the body, right? I don't think anybody can disagree
That's
with
right.
that. Well, how does the body tell you when it needs nourishment? Through hunger. When was the last time somebody stopped and asked, am I hungry? The average person, almost never.
Hmm.
And to me, talking about basics, that's basics.
That's basics.
Where, and to me, if you can learn that habit, you're gonna find you might even start skipping lunch.
Yeah, yeah.
You will find that you don't need to eat as often. And oh, and one big benefit, by the way, I forgot to mention, because a lot of people say to me, "Well, I enjoy food way too much to be eating only once or twice a day." And I can tell you, I get more enjoyment out of one meal than most people get out of 5 meals.
Of course.
Because when you're truly hungry, your taste buds are more sensitive. So you can actually taste your food much better than you would if you kind of full, you were not really truly hungry.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with that. So that's your third habit. So
Yes.
the fourth and the fifth. Yeah.
So we had the exercise.
The fasting.
The fourth one is learn to eat slowly and mindfully,
Okay.
and stop eating when you satisfy your hunger. Every study, and I've read quite a few of them, that I've read on slow and mindful eating, every single one came to the same conclusion. People that have learned to eat slowly and mindfully end up eating less food without trying. And that's the key, is to eat less without feeling deprived. Because if you eat less by counting calories, but you always feel wanting to eat more, it's only a matter of time before they say the heck with this and give in.
Sure.
And there's a reason, by the way, why slow and mindful eating, you end up eating less food without trying. And here's the answer to that. When do you get pleasure out of food? Right? When the food is in your mouth. Once you swallow the food, you no longer can taste it, you no longer getting pleasure.
Hmm.
So the longer you keep the food in your mouth and you chew it longer, and the more attention you pay to it, well, you end up getting more pleasure out of less food. Because from each bite of food, you get more pleasure.
Hmm.
So total, you get more pleasure.
Hmm.
And and also, is part of the habit is to learn to stop eating when you satisfy your hunger.
Hmm.
Again, the question is, how do you know that I'm satisfied, my hunger is satisfied?
Of course.
And again, you can tell by the taste, by tasting the food. But if you're not paying attention and you're not eating slowly and mindfully, you're not tasting the food, so you don't really know.
Yeah.
But once you learn to eat slowly and mindfully, you know what you're gonna find? And I don't know if you have noticed that yourself, is that the first few bites taste the best. At one point you're eating and you continue eating, although the food doesn't taste as good.
Hmm.
That's your sign. Stop eating, you're full.
Hmm.
And to me, once you can get over those first three eating habits, everybody that I've trained loses weight before we even get into the next habit, which deals with what you're eating.
Hmm.
And well, what I was going to say about the slow and mindful eating is that it is a little harder to develop, especially if you're a fast eater.
Mm.
But with a little practice and a little patience, everybody can learn it. You know?
So let me give you an example. So if I have
Sure.
a roasted chicken in front of me,
Yes.
do I take in small bits throughout the week so then I can appreciate the food?
Yeah. Well, let's say you're eating a chicken, okay? Yes, I will first eat the best parts, the ones that you like the best.
Okay.
But I will cut one piece at a time. Don't cut the whole chicken. Cut one piece at a time. Take a bite. Put your fork down. Focus on the food in your mouth. That's why I always tell people, don't watch TV, don't do any work while eating. Really focus on the food and the taste. If you cooked it yourself, did I put enough salt, enough pepper, whatever spices you used? If you went to a restaurant, to me it's a game. I was trying to guess what spices did the chef use. I mean, since I have a chef background myself,
Of course.
you know, but it made me pay more attention though. Then pick up the fork, cut another piece. Because if you take a piece you have in your mouth and then you're holding another piece of food on your fork, keeping it in front of your mouth like this, psychologically you're pressuring yourself. So you rush yourself and you swallow much faster than you really need to. And once you feel that, you know something, I'm no longer enjoying the food as much. I don't care how much chicken's left on the plate. Stop eating. That's why I always say, eat the good parts first
Of course.
and leave the worst parts at the end, because you might not need to eat them.
Oh, right. And the fifth habit?
My favorite one is the make junk food special.
Okay.
Okay, and let me explain it a little bit, because I know a lot of nutritionists say to people, you know, you gotta get rid of junk food. I tell my clients, make it special, because let's be real here, junk food tastes way too good to give up. Okay, I've tried to give up junk food myself. I failed miserably. So I realized that in Greece we had junk food. We ate junk food. We ate our fair share. How come the junk food in Greece didn't affect us? Then it affects us here. Yeah. One answer is that our junk food was much better quality, but again, that's another conversation. But what I mean by special, eat on special occasions. Like in Greece, we didn't have dessert after every dinner. We only had dessert on the weekends. I remember my mother, if it was a good movie on TV, she would get us potato chip and Cokes. And it was such a huge deal that we had Coke. Okay? And we're here, you have a lot of people have Coke with every single meal. Breakfast, well, not breakfast, lunch and dinner. So to me, junk food was meant to be a treat, something that you have once in a while. And if you treat it as a treat, number one, it's not going to affect your health. And number two, you're not going to crave it. Because I tell you my personal story, and again, I got to give credit to my wife on this one. I used to eat tons of junk food. I mean, I used to have chocolate every night. I used to drink soda every day. But because it didn't affect my health at that point, I kept doing it. Because I'll look fine in the mirror, who cares? So my wife says to me one day, don't you feel like a hypocrite? Because you tell your clients to stop eating junk food and yet yourself eat junk food pretty much every single day. And that was like years ago, because it was like I was 10 years in the industry. So I said to her, you know something? That's a very good point you're making. And plus, I would like to better understand how it is to give up a habit, how to change a habit. And that's why I started getting into how to change behaviors. So my first attempt was get rid of all junk food from the house. So I got rid of all my favorite junk food from the house, which that's what most nutritionists tell people to do. Well, then I would go to my mother's house. My mother kept all my favorite junk food, like devil dogs. And I wouldn't just have one devil dog. I would have half of the box. So I started becoming like every time I had a chance to have junk food, I couldn't just stop at one. I would have tons. And I realized this is not working. And that's when I started doing research on how do we change behaviors. And I came across what's called have you heard of the Kaizen method?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So it's an ancient Asian philosophical system for those of you who don't know on how to apply change. So my first attempt was, okay, I need to make it into small steps. My first try was actually on flossing. I thought, I wasn't flossing regularly. So I said, let me try to develop the habit of flossing. So I started flossing one tooth every night, one tooth, up, down. I told my dentist what I was doing. His reaction was, you're not flossing, you're wasting your time. I said, George, that's his name, by the way. You're missing the point. I'm not trying to floss. I forget the results that I want. I'm trying to develop the habit of picking up the floss every night. By making the action so ridiculously easy, and I forget the results that I want. I just wanted to pick up the string every night. It became a behavior, it became a routine. And then before you know it, after a couple of months, I was flossing every single tooth. So then I applied that in junk food. So what I did was Monday through Friday, I would stop having junk food. On the weekends, I can have all the junk food that I want. And I started first with soda drinks, like sodas, any kind of soda.
Mm-hmm.
I left everything else intact.
Mm-hmm.
Once I got used to not having soda during the week, then I moved into chocolates and candy. Once I got used to that, and by the way, I didn't do it cold turkey. I would break the habit maybe 4 or 5 times, but each week I tried to break it less. And
Sure.
then the last thing to go was chips. And that's how I got rid of junk food. So now you can offer my favorite junk food during the week. It will not even faze me. All I have to remember it's Wednesday or Thursday or Tuesday. And clients of mine that they brought me some foreign junk food, they'll bring it in. I'll keep it on my desk, and I would not touch it until Friday or Saturday. Friday after 5 p.m. because Friday after 5 p.m. is part of the weekend.
Of course.
And that's the last part of the 5 habits that I teach. And I find that automatically when you start eating less junk food, well, something has to replace it. So what happens? You start eating more fruits and vegetables automatically without even getting into telling you to eat more fruits and vegetables.
Of course, of course.
Although I do mention the part of the habit.
So we're almost very close to the episode today, but let me ask you a very quick question. Out of the
Sure.
5 habits, which one is the toughest one to go and help out your clients?
The slow and mindful.
Slow and mindful.
Slow and mindful eating, I find, because unfortunately society is always in the rush.
Yes.
And I find in my experience, most of my clients, including myself actually, it was the slow and mindful. The 16-hour habit, most people didn't have a problem. They think they will, but once they start doing it, it becomes pretty easy. Even that junk food, because if you know that you can have junk food every weekend, it's easier to resist during the week. It's when you can never have it again is when cravings really take over.
Wow.
But the slow and mindful, that's what I would say.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on this episode and making this brighter for me and explaining in details about these 5 habits that we have, or I should say we should try to have.
Yeah.
Before you leave today, do you have any last words for Back to Basics listeners?
Yes.
And details? Yeah, go ahead.
My best advice is that don't try to change and develop all 5 habits. Start with one. Start with the exercise one. Make it a habit. Once you're comfortable with it, go to the next habit. Once you make it a habit, go to the next habit. Don't try to change everything at once. That will be my advice, especially with around the holidays. It's hard to change everything at once, and you're human. No, if it was that easy, I tell people, here, take my book, read it, and be done with it. It's not that easy. But if you focus on changing one thing at a time, it becomes much easier than people think.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you again for coming on the show, and we will stay in touch. And I want to know all the other these 5 habits and pick your brain on certain ones of them, especially the fasting one for 16 hours. So we'll talk that offline. But thank you again for coming on the show again.
No, thank you for having me, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So guys, we spoke with the guest of ours today, and we talked about the basics of habits, exercising, fasting. There's many different things, but there's one thing that I really caught out of the 5 habits. Welcome your junk food. And your junk food is every weekend. How crazy is that? No one would actually say stay away from it, and he's saying come back to it. Let's enjoy the junk food. So guys, as usual, as always, there is a quote of the day, and hopefully the guest of ours will like the quote of the day. And the quote of the day is, I believe that the greatest gift you can give your family and the world is a healthy you. And I think that's what he's trying to do. And guys, as usual, as always, what do I always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care. God bless. Comment my episodes. Good, bad, ugly, either way, it'll make my show stronger day by day, week by week. And there are 3 things that this show is a hit between me and me, which is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. Guys, take care, God bless, and I will see you next week. next week's episode on Back to Basics. Today we're going to talk about the negative versus the positive thoughts, which is the overthinking thoughts, right? So obviously there is definitely a big difference between the positive and the negative. So let's focus on the negative one, if we don't mind, because I think we overthink many different things. We lose a job, we lose a friend, a family member, any of those aspects. But even the simple things that we also overthink. For example, we run out of gas, we overthink. So what are your thought process on that? How do we channelize the negativity?